everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of Mastering Dungeons, your favorite tabletop role-playing game news and game design and other news and other game design podcast. I'm Shawn Merwin here with my ever-present and always lovely Teos Abadia. Hey, Teos, what's going on?
Hello, Shawn. Ooh, what's going on? I mean, the holidays are in full swing. My house is decked in lights. I did not fall off the ladder. The gifts are either wrapped or on their way, and full family. That's always nice. So that's kind of neat.
That's good.
And I'm excited because today we're going to be joined by Ethan Yen,
We are.
amazing
Ethan is
designer.
going to join us to talk about his career so far in the industry
Mhm.
and his wonderful new role-playing game called Prequel. But we will get to all of that later. I was driving home from my game this weekend. It was very late, and I'm looking at this house all decked out in lights, and I thought, how come they haven't taken their lights down yet?
Okay.
Yeah, I thought Christmas had already passed, Teos.
Wow, that's
That's
good.
that's where that's where
Yeah.
I am mentally. Um,
Yep.
yeah, it's not good.
Hmm.
I wanted to give a couple of notes. I have talked about Page, the
Uh-huh.
Philadelphia Area Gaming Expo. It looks like it's going to be an incredible convention at a great location on the outskirts of Philadelphia with lots of games, all sorts of special guests. I know the vendor area sold out quickly because Ghostfire was going to try to get a table there and couldn't. Uh,
Wow.
Unfortunately, I will not be there. I had planned to be there, but a scheduling conflict has occurred, so I will not be able to attend. So if you had signed up for a game or one of the seminars I was going to do, many apologies. Hopefully next year will be the year. Uh, but I will be attending the Geneseo Area Gaming Group's convention called Running Gag
Hmm.
the weekend of January 30th, 31st, and February 1st, so a month from now. I'll be there on Saturday and Sunday running Grim Hunt Adventures and doing a panel on Sunday morning about working in the gaming industry. So if you are local to Western New York, the Rochester, Syracuse,
Uh-huh.
Buffalo area, and you're interested at Geneseo, uh,
Ooh.
we'll see you there. You can go to Running Gag's Facebook page
Hmm.
or their tabletop events page to sign up for all of that goodness.
Yeah, and then you and I will be at Winter Fantasy, so that'll be exciting. I'm looking forward to that. I
Yep.
think that's my next convention. Yeah, nothing before then. I'm running a bunch of Living Greyhawk. What are you up to? Or not
I
Living
am running
Greyhawk, Legends of
yeah,
Greyhawk.
I am running four author only adventures for Legends of Greyhawk. So I will be there doing that, also helping out with a Ghostfire event as well, and
Mhm.
maybe even doing some game playing. Hey, you never know.
You never know.
You also never know what our listeners are going to say, but they send us their questions and their comments anyway, and we take them and try to answer them. And we're going to start with JR of the Twilight Perspective, who sent us this via a Patreon. Teos and Shawn, I just came across and backed Old John Stewart's Mill by Which Please Publishing. It's a philosophy themed module designed for use in the classroom.
Hmm.
I also backed Tabletop EDU's production of a book for designing lesson plans through the medium of role playing games. I can't wait to get a hold of these and eventually start implementing them into my classroom. I am a new teacher, just finished my first year teaching ninth grade English. Congratulations. I'd love to hear both your thoughts on RPGs as
Mhm.
a tool in education. What anecdotes would you share from stories you've heard about people attempting this? I've got a long answer here.
Yeah, go for it.
So first of all, my wife just retired from teaching for 30 years, teaching ninth grade, 10th grade, 11th grade, and 12th grade
Whew.
social studies slash history slash geography.
Wow.
And she has used role playing game type games in instruction. So I know a little bit about it.
Hmm.
But I want to start with this. I want to start with a quote from Terry Pratchett,
Okay.
right? In some of his books, he talks about the third sight. And what's third sight? Well, this is what Terry Pratchett says. First thoughts are everyday thoughts. Everyone has those. Second thoughts are the thoughts you think about the way you think.
Okay.
People who enjoy thinking have second thoughts. Third thoughts are the thoughts that watch the world and think all by themselves. They're rare and often troublesome. Listening to them is a part of witchcraft. And what's my point here? Teaching requires the third thoughts because the first thought is, what am I teaching? The second thought is, how am I teaching what I'm teaching? And the third thought is, how is the thoughts about what I'm teaching really telling me what I'm teaching? And I've seen my share of teachers over the years, and far too many rarely get to first thoughts in a really distinct and positive way. But if you're going to use any tool, not just role playing games, you need to get to that third thought level. So teaching well is hard, just like being a DM well is hard because there are lots of things going on. If you want to use role playing games in education, I think those are great tools because I think role playing and I think games both are very valuable inherently on their own. And then as a tool for teaching, they're even more valuable. But if you're trying to use them to teach content, you have to foster and listen to those third thoughts. I did a panel at Gamehole Con on role-playing games in education, and my wife was on it with me and Mike Merles. She was teaching how she uses role-playing games to teach history and geography. I was saying, this is how I teach writing by using role-playing games as a medium. And Mike was talking about teaching games specifically. And those are three separate things, right? So the question you need to ask yourself as a teacher, if you're using a role-playing game, isn't, did the game go well? That's just like, that's a second thought, right? The first thought is, here's a game. The second thought is, did the game go well? The third thought is, did the students learn more than just the game when I ran the game? Did they learn the actual content that this game was supposed to impart? And so for using RPGs in education, you should ask if the non-game content of the lesson succeeded. Because even if the students had an amazing time, in the case of my wife, the example she gave was teaching about manners during the Dark Ages and Middle Ages and what it meant about life, in Europe at that time. And it's fine to play the game because, students love a game and they're rolling dice and they're doing these things. But at the end of the game, was it just, that was awesome? Or was it, now I understand how important water is in life. Now I know how important the church has been over the years to people's everyday life. Now I understand what the Crusades are, right? If she can get her students to know that through the game, where they might not have learned it well if she had just told them about it,
right?
Then you've gotten to that third thought level, and you know that the game is making the lesson, not just making something fun or not just being a part of the lesson, right? It's the entire thing. I hope that makes sense.
I love it. Yeah, no, it does. It does. Teaching has always been in my blood. Both my parents were teachers, and so I grew up with teacher parents. The various experiences I've had that I've really enjoyed and appreciated and have kind of formulated how I think about this. One is teaching game design to Cub Scouts. And what it's like for young minds to go from, playing a game to developing a game, right? Which is a little more like what Mike Merles was talking about, the design of games. That's a really neat experience because suddenly you're not just, it's not abstract. You have to do it. In the next hour, you're going to make a game. And when you make that game facing these difficult decisions, it's really eye-opening because you're doing it for the first time and at a young age. And so that idea of how this comes together, it's an invaluable experience for the kids, right? That they can now say, this is complicated and you have to make these kinds of choices. You can't explain it the way that you live it, right? The other thing I think of is taking on roles, which role playing, of course, is so exceptional at doing. It's that whole idea of walking miles in someone's shoes or something like that, but you really do. And so when you take on these roles in whatever format they might be. It can be role-playing games. It can be things like I forget the name from, but where like everybody takes a country, right? And you have to do things like negotiate climate change treaties, right? And you have to adopt the position of India or Europe or China or the US, and those are entirely different positions geopolitically. And thinking through why you are saying things a certain way. When you leave that exercise, you aren't just you are you that understands what it's like to be India, right? And at some level.
Right.
And that is really neat because you don't appreciate that just reading text about what the various countries would do. And so any kind of role-playing or role adoption type situation like that can be very valuable when you are providing that experience to think differently and adopt that position, which is I find really cool.
Right. And what Teos said here is incredibly important, right? When you step into someone else's shoes, you get this idea, you start to see the nuances.
Yeah.
Where a game comes in is it forces people who otherwise might not be capable of or willing to take that role and gamify it to the point where they start to care a little bit more. And it really laser focuses in, right? You can tell someone you are going to take the part of a soldier during the Civil War, right? And you can say, okay, now I want you to write a letter home, or I want you. That's fine for some people, but for some people, they're either not willing to or incapable of making that step. You add a 6-sided die to that with some variables, that will get their attention really quickly. When you say, well, now you have dysentery because you rolled a 3 on the 6-sided die. Well, now they want to know why this happened. Right. They want to know what the consequences are because there's something more at stake than just thinking and writing.
Right.
And sometimes just that D6, that table of events that might happen to them, will make the hugest difference in the attention span and the focus of certain individuals, certain students. So all of it can come together to really be a powerful tool. As long as you have made that third thought, you've gotten to that point where you're saying, does this actually do what I expect it to do?
Yeah. Love it.
Great question. I hope that's just scratching the surface, but I hope it's helpful. We have a question from Andrew Bashinsky via our Patreon Discord. When looking at new systems like Draw Steel and Daggerheart, is it fair to ask how easy that system is to use to run something not designed precisely for it? For example, the effort it would take to run my favorite D&D hardcover with it. Or is that like asking a hammer to be a screwdriver, then complaining that it's not? I think that's a fair question to ask.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, it's a harder question to answer because in order to make a judgment call on that, you would have to experiment, and then you would have to be equally versed in all the games you were converting to and converting from. I think I could take a Draw Steel or a Daggerheart adventure and put it into D&D 5e because I know D&D 5e so well. I could take anything and put it into D&D 5e.
Yeah.
So that's the question you need to answer by being equal in all.
And I think what Andrew's sort of saying is, is it unfair or fair to say, okay, Daggerheart, but can I easily dot things to it, right? That's such an interesting topic. Like of course, it's fair to ask it, but it's actually there's a lot of payoff in trying to answer it. And just the other night after our pirate board game, I was speaking with Jeff Mueller, who is running our Daggerheart game, and he is taking Ravenloft as well as the Ravenloft adventure, The Created, and adapting those to Daggerheart. And there are always these fun bits. Like my Fun Grill has the ancestry power where I can just touch a dead person and name an emotion, and I see the last time they had that. So, I touched the murder mystery dead person, and I think fear. And Jeff's like, okay. Is that better than Speak with Dead? Is it worse? It depends. But and he did a great job with it. It was a lot of fun. But it's that kind of thing. You're like, oh yeah, this is an entirely different system. But even just things like skills, right? Where in Draw Steel, the difficulty that you assign to something isn't just a DC. It's literally saying whether there's a chance of failure, right? And so because for an easy check, there isn't. It's just a success with a consequence. So it's such an interesting thing to try to comprehend how to move something. It's a lot harder than just monsters, which are always the classic hard bit to change, or the structure of encounters, which is another common thing people will say, right? Like they would always say, like, can I convert Keep on the Borderlands to 4th edition? Well, of course you can, but they are different games in how they were structured, AD&D and 4E, right? But when you get into things like the skills just are doing entirely different things, or converting Strahd to Daggerheart, right? Daggerheart doesn't have monsters like 5th edition does. They are different, and so but there's lessons in that, right? There's fun in it, and figuring out how you want to express what you think is the fun, I think is actually really valuable. It helps you rethink what the experience is supposed to be and what you want to do with it in the context of these games. And that's another thing, is the games often have a slightly different context of the play experience, so they aren't trying to do the same thing, right? Which is fascinating. So
I think if you're a game designer, and I don't mean like a paid professional game designer, but someone who makes up your own content that you run for your home game, picking up Keep on the Borderlands and running it in Daggerheart, no problem, because that's what you would do anyway. You're just starting with the idea. If you expect to pick it up and run it from the adventure itself without taking the time to go through it, then that is definitely not a fair ask for a game. Daggerheart written adventures should not be pick up and play for other systems. That's not what they're meant for.
And both games, and just not that we should only confine ourselves to Daggerheart and Draw Steel, though they're in our minds a lot these days. Both games have a situation where you're going to run out of resources and need to rest. And resting is a little more complicated than it is in various versions of D&D. So that cadence of play will be different. And those are hard things to convert, right? When you hit that, the adventure is expecting you to complete this entire level. My game system I'm using doesn't really allow for that without taking a break. That is an interesting thing you've got to figure out. But so it goes.
It's about the different game loops, right? It's the tactical game loop of round for round, turn per turn, and then the story game loop of when can I rest, how many encounters am I supposed to have, how many resources do I need to use, etc. All of that goes into it. We've got other great questions, but we'll have to get to those next time, because we are going to get to a lot of news this week, starting with the wrap-up of 2025 from D&D Beyond. We get an article from Brian Perry, who's the new executive producer of D&D Beyond. Congratulations. And Brian updates us on the state of D&D Beyond. Brian's been at Wizards for 10 years, working on projects like the SRD release and local game store access. He also listens to the show. So, hi, Brian. I hope you're listening. Congratulations again. What does this article on D&D Beyond tell us, Teos?
He starts by saying Wizards wants to be clear about their mission and priorities. And I was struck by, and I don't know if the Wizards folks want this comparison, but I'll make it nonetheless, because I think a lot of fans will have it, which is when D&D Beyond was independent, Adam Bradford had a great job of just going over the roadmap, right? He would share his board that he was, the team was working on, and it was very transparent, very open. And there seems to be a return towards that kind of approach, wanting to be clear about missions and priorities, what they're working on, where they are, which is awesome. So he starts by saying our purpose, and it's two things. D&D is the best way to hang out with friends, and this includes, I'm glad to hear, both in person and online. Make it easier to embrace, not replace, the social experience when you play. And the second is D&D Beyond can make D&D easier. Digital tools should break down barriers to grow the hobby, easier for the DM, streamline play for players when you're making your characters and being part of a campaign and so on. And after the wrap up, or after this kind of mission part, they do a wrap up of the year, including the with that post released localized SRD 5.2.1 is now available in 4 more languages: French, Italian, German, and Spanish. That's great. A lot of us have been asking for this, so thank you. They have, you will already notice, updated the D&D Beyond homepage with a new look with dedicated sections for building a character, news, partnered creations, and more. That partnered creators section is particularly interesting because it really, highlights certain creators. And I'm sure will bring questions of, hey, how do I get the big picture or even one of the small ones as a partner? So good luck figuring that one out. Art and handout reveals in Maps. So by the time you are listening to this show, they will have a new feature in Maps that allows the DM to reveal art or handouts, which I think you would have enjoyed when we were running through our game. And then an overhaul, this one I'm so happy to hear about, of my library. So also coming out this week is an update from the sources section, where you mouse over and see a list that's enormous and hard to navigate, but doesn't include everything, to what's called My Library. And this will make it customizable and sortable for users. And you can favorite your books so that Acq Inc will actually be on your screen rather than having to require several clicks. So I love that. What else, Shawn?
There were some things that were impending but delayed into 2026. So we get 3D dice rolling in Maps, which is expected to come out early in 2026. Rules Assistant, also coming out in early 2026, which is a searchable encyclopedia that helps keep your game moving while you are using Maps as your VTT. And then to be determined on the release date is the campaign console. And this is what was said about it. Based on our own internal feedback, we realized the original concept didn't solve enough DM pain points. The team has shifted focus to a broader, more flexible campaign tool that should solve more DM needs. And I've used their campaign feature from before to sort of keep track of things, but it definitely was a separate thing that didn't integrate well into the other sections.
Yep.
So it looks like they are going to be investigating that. Brian, of course, also promised more frequent updates at least once a month, and the roadmap will be shared into the new year.
Yeah, and then they held a Reddit AMA. There are a number of items here, just 3 quick points I noticed paging through the responses. There are many issues and bugs were raised, this class, how it's done, and so on. And a lot of the answers were, we want to do that, but we have to address the fact that the backend for game data and game rules needs to be updated, right? So this idea of updating legacy code to function in a different way that makes things updatable. Updating homebrewing is also planned. They said they will probably start with monsters, and I thought it was interesting. They said that is what is most homebrewed by users, so they'll work on improving homebrewing there with starting with monsters. And then they actually answered one of those historic questions that we've always wondered about. Why did you turn a la carte purchases off, right? We could buy like a set of feats from a book rather than the entire book. And they said that this was a technical problem that was starting to become a real impact on site speed and stability because every individual item sort of had to be checked and would eat up a bunch of resources just by its existence. And so as more and more books are being added, it was becoming a higher and higher load. So that was the kind of thing that, like, if you say that when you remove it rather than stealth removing it, that makes a really big difference on how people react to you. And so, that kind of trust angle. So very nice to hear as part of that.
Yeah. Zach Cohn, who is the new principal project manager for the D&D Beyond Maps team, wants to hear from you about what would help dungeon masters with prepping and running their games using maps. And he'll have an update shortly later this week on how you can get involved in that process. So they're going to be taking user feedback on how to make maps work best for your games.
Cool. Yeah, I also noted that there's a post up that on D&D Beyond, a blog post for partner products in various price ranges. So things that include physical items as well as digital. Which I thought was kind of neat because sometimes the partners that are out there making whatever it is, belt buckles, waffle makers, like they're not really shared by D&D. So it's nice to see some of those, being pulled together here.
To move from D&D Beyond to D&D video games, Wizards of the Coast announced a Warlock D&D video game. This promised gameplay reveals in the summer of 2026, and then a game launch in 2027, as a trailer was released on Thursday for this upcoming game called Warlock. I did not get a chance to look at it, Teos.
Mm.
I assume you did. So, what is this
Yeah.
about?
Yeah, we see Katri, who is a warlock, and she's, summoning her sword out of a well, and then she fights a whole bunch of undead, and then there's like what looks like to be a death kiss beholder as a foe. There were a lot of elements of ravens and feathers, which made me think and made other folks think, hey, Raven Queen maybe is a patron. That could be interesting. But it is an original third-person, single-player action adventure game. And it's all D&D inspired. It's developed by Invoke Studios, currently in development for PC, PlayStation 5, and Xbox. And there were a number of posts that started coming out. This came out around a video game awards piece, so there have been a number of game trailers being released by various people. And one of the things that came out in interviews is they talked about magic would be creative and, quote, what we're asking players to do is to think creatively with the magic. There's utility baked into all of these spells that they can use to solve environmental challenges, traverse the world, uncover secrets, and fight monsters in unconventional ways. And they said they really like to see and want the game to allow for this sort of combination of spells as sort of experiments by the player to solve challenges the way a player wants to. And the blend of structure and agency is how Invoke hopes to honor that tabletop heritage without chasing an impossible one-to-one adaptation of D&D.
Yep.
Invoke Studios, a little bit of a mixed thing for us, right? Historically.
Yeah, they used to be Took Games, and they created the not so well received 2021 Dark Alliance D&D game. Now they're Invoke Studios, still based in Montreal, but they are an in-house Wizards of the Coast studio now. And it was revealed that the voice for Katri is played by Trisha Helfer. You may remember her from the television show Battlestar Galactica, who played the Cylon number 6.
Awesome.
And she's also voiced video game characters for StarCraft 2 and Mass Effect.
Yep.
Link all over our show notes here in various places, so you can go check it out there. Any further thoughts on that?
I look forward to it. I hope it's done well. Of course, we always do this. These are such big endeavors. It's so hard to launch these and create these and get the right kind of gameplay. So we will keep our eyes peeled and look forward to it.
Mm-hmm. We'll also keep an eye on Justice Arman, who was promoted last week. Congratulations, Justice, who has been promoted to Game Design Director for D&D at Wizards of the Coast. He apparently now directs the D&D design department as a whole.
Amazing.
Justice shared this news on Bluesky, where he spoke of his gratitude for his team, his mentors, and those who have supported him along the way. Link to that post in our show notes.
It's great news. I have heard from a number of staff talking about how great it is to have Justice there. I've told Justice that too, because you really should hear it, and that's great, right? Somebody who's just rocking a job. So awesome.
Yeah. It's great to have been able to follow the path of the people who have gotten into higher management positions, and we've watched Justice work on, smaller games, smaller indie games, bigger productions, and then go to Beetle and Grimm's and go from there. And it's been great to watch. And he is truly a wonderful creator and a wonderful person, which is good to know as well. We go from a promotion to a departure. Departure, though, not from Wizards, but from White Wolf. Jason Carl departs the world of darkness and White Wolf, leaving it for Dungeon Master University. Jason's new role is at Tabletop Vacations, the company that runs D&D in a castle. He will be the Dean of Dungeon Master University, leading that program. He was the brand manager for White Wolf and the World of Darkness over the past decade, and has been a huge part of Vampire the Masquerade. These efforts will improve how these efforts included how the setting spoke to fans. Of particular importance was his speaking out against the toxic play and hate speech that became a bit of an issue in other
Yeah.
iterations of the World of Darkness games.
Yeah. And in the fan base.
Jason, yeah. Jason also helped create the Storytellers Vault community content program at DriveThruRPG for the World of Darkness games. He has said this has been vital in bringing new voices into the setting. Jason also mentioned his role in the LA by Night actual play series, where he was the storyteller. Jason spoke well of the team that's still there at White Wolf, including creative director Jess Lanzillo, who said, and he says, "I have absolute confidence that the World of Darkness will continue to thrive, evolve, and surprise us all."
Mhm.
And so that's sort of a big move.
Yeah.
Going from really, a game design studio to a completely new,
Mm-hmm.
growing question mark uh, aspect of
Yeah.
our business and our hobby. So it'll be really interesting. I was supposed to talk with Jason at Gen Con, and we were having trouble connecting.
Uh-huh.
And so I went to the Wizards of the Coast area, and I looked over, and they had a D&D in a castle thing there, and he was there.
Uh,
And I was like, "Hey, imagine that! We couldn't connect, but here you are." And so we chatted for a bit, and I'm excited for him, and I'm excited to see how this. It's like ecotourism, but for games, RPG
right.
tourism
Right.
industry
Yeah. And
expands and grows.
it is not a cheap thing to participate in anything related to D&D in a castle. And so,
Right.
this is DM University for a particular type of audience with a big budget to spend. And so that's in some ways really neat, right? Fascinating when you have all these resources that you can use to create a really amazing experience. And then can you grow that and maintain it, right, is always a big question.
Yeah. I think the educational aspect of it is just as big as the
Mm-hmm.
travel aspect of it,
Mm-hmm.
because I know that people ask me constantly, "Can I take this class you teach?" And
Yeah.
unfortunately, no, because it's through a college in person. It's
Uh-huh.
not online. But I know that the interest is out there to learn those skills and to,
Yeah.
interact and to grow in that aspect of your life. So maybe there's something there.
Mm-hmm.
We will keep an eye on it. Talk about Chris Perkins and Jeremy Crawford talking about Acquisitions Incorporated, Teos.
Yeah, Todd Kenrick interviewed the two of them on his show, filmed just before the PAX Unplugged convention, and they discussed switching Acq Inc. from D&D 5e to Daggerheart. I think we're the first to break the news of this, and it's funny because I thought it was really obvious.
Yeah.
Not only was this is how wrong I am about things. I was like, oh, of course everybody saw this. And they said that when they telegraphed the change during the show of plunging a literal dagger into a literal heart and talking about undoing all reality, after they did that show and told the cast that now we'll be switching to Daggerheart, the cast was flabbergasted. Nobody had figured out that they were actually switching to Daggerheart, right? The actual players doing the plunging of daggers into hearts hadn't figured it out, and they were laughing about that, and I laughed about that too. They discuss how the cast has been having fun re-envisioning their characters' new forms, taking the opportunity to create stronger bonds with current and past PCs. I think they talked about Anna Prosser sort of going, there are a number of times that I've jumped onto a show and someone else is there, but I haven't really figured out the nature of my relationship. And so they're doing that in a Daggerheart way, which is neat. They have been working, Chris and Jeremy have been working with Jerry Holkins to redefine the campaign frame itself that they're using with brand new gods and new campaign underpinnings, because this is no longer fitting Acq Inc. to Acq Inc. to the Forgotten Realms. They're creating an entire new world, right, that has been spun out of this reality that got reformed. And this is a world where at the dawn of time, rather than fight, the bickering gods agreed to split everything up into different portfolios with each person born to a specific god's track. So it's kind of like the whole reality is corporate and you just get funneled into your little track in society. And there is a just delightful part in this video where Jeremy says, quote, "corporate comedy and corporate horror." And Chris Perkins interjects, quote, "which we both know so well." And everybody just dies laughing, including Todd, who was, recently fired from Wizards. And Todd just goes, "Wow." It was an amazing moment.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember when we were working on the Acq Inc. book, and we didn't know if we were going to be allowed to use Forgotten Realms.
Forgotten Realms.
And so
Hmm.
we were like, do we need to build our own world? And what would a world of Acq Inc. look like? And
Yeah.
a campaign frame is such a great tool, not just for Daggerheart, but for any campaign, right? What specifically is the setting? What specifically are the special rules? Wait,
Yeah.
what specifically are the goals? All of that is something that people have done over the years. It just hasn't been formalized into the term campaign frame.
Yep.
But being able to do that from scratch with this IP, with Jerry getting to put his maniacal mitts onto it
Oh,
is
wow.
is just it. I can't wait to see what they
Yeah,
come up with.
absolutely. Hmm.
But coming up with something big is MCDM because their draw steel has cracked the sun and the funding goals. So to say the MCDM has launched their latest crowdfunder is an understatement. They met their funding goals of 1.25 million in under a day, in under 24 hours. So this isn't one of those, oh, we're putting down 40,000 and oh, look, we did it in 10 seconds. No, this was, yeah, we need 1.25 million and they got there in under a day.
Yeah.
Uh, since you have a slight bit to do with this, Teos, I think I'll let you talk about it a little bit more.
Well, it's really awesome seeing. I think as of this recording, 21 days left. There's over 5,700 backers, over 1.78 million. Those are really good numbers, and you might think, well, that's absurd. How can a company need this much? And there are two parts of this. One is just the baseline, which is MCDM. Unlike most companies, operates in such a way and has a goal such that they are paying everybody really well. They're paying me
Mhm.
really well as a contractor. They're paying all of the authors really well. They pay their staff really well. They share the profits of the company with the staff really well. Matt has talked about that in various ways on his Twitch streams. And that's really, I know of no company that operates this way. So doing all that is expensive, right? But
Mhm.
also, this project isn't just Crack the Sun and just, I mean, Crack the Sun is an enormous adventure endeavor that if all that was, you might want those 1.25 million just for that if you're a regular company.
Mhm.
Regular large company. I don't even know how to describe it. What is regular anymore? But they aren't just doing Crack the Sun. So we have draw steel encounters available in hardcover or PDF, which is a ton of pre-made encounters, skill test scenarios, ready to use negotiations and montages, and more. It's the if you're a home brewer, you know, you're running campaigns and you want to be able to drop in scenarios, have lots of cool examples of how skills work, this delivers on that. The Beastheart class and 4 subclasses in PDF. Between Sun and Shadow, a softcover or PDF book with 8 new ancestries, new complications. You know, I love complications, treasures,
Mhm.
retainers, monsters, etc. The Condemned, which is a level 3 anti-hero adventure in PDF. And this is like the idea of, you know, you are a terrible person and you get to define what kind of terrible person you are with a shock collar around you forcing you to
Mhm.
do this job for team good. um you know, great. There's a lot of classic, you know, comic book type inspiration there, a Suicide Squad type thing. And so you're going in on this possible suicide mission, forced to do, you know, what good people need you to do, good-ish. Then you have Dark Heart of the Wood, a level 2 adventure in PDF and softcover, and The Red Road, also for level 2, so 2 neat adventures. So there's just a ton in here. It's essentially the year's releases, right? And so there you can
Mhm.
see the funding of the company here, as well as the clear question spoken by Matt and other folks on the team saying, does the audience want more Draw Steel, and do they want it now? Matt has said, you know, probably a lot of you are still like reading your core books. You know, some of you are just getting your Ajax editions. Are you ready to do more Draw Steel, or are you still finishing up that D&D campaign? So far, it looks like people are ready for Draw Steel and want MCDM to make more products. And so that's a lot of what this is about, is funding
Mhm.
the continued life of the Draw Steel RPG. So you have until January 4th to jump on that and speak your piece if you want to be part of it. We've got links in our show notes. The project is on BackerKit, And there are some nice articles in Polygon. I just saw one today on Rascal as well.
We've gotten the D&D Bologna in Spain. We've gotten D&D stamps in the US. Now we've got IKEA in Italy releasing Dronjans and Dragon
Mm.
inspirational catalog. So at Milan Games Week and Cartoomix convention, IKEA held game sessions and had decorated areas, providing the Dungeons and Dragon Swedish manual of great sounding names.
I mean, I
Cover
love
reads
that.
summon heroes, places, and charms when inspiration falters. I've just mangled that so well, Teos.
Yeah.
I know you're trying to hold it together.
Ni är inte
Lead me through
svensk.
this. What's that?
Ni är inte svensk.
Okay.
For our Swedish listeners. So this is such a great concept, right? It is making self fun of the idea that the names of the various furniture items at IKEA are legendarily weird, and it describes this catalog, which you can get in PDF, link in our show notes. It's in Italian and then Swedish, but it's saying, hey, do you need a name for like a goblin? Nicephores can be your ingenious goblin. Need a valley of perennial mists? Bjorksta can be your valley, right? Duktig is the sword that no one dares to wield for fear of mispronouncing it. So it's a really funny joke about this concept of how you can use the names of IKEA products to as drop-ins for the things in your world. The rest is a catalog entirely in Swedish, presumably to provide maximum inspiration to the Italian GMs. But those first few pages are very hilarious and very D&D themed, and they don't, say D&D, of course, but it's everybody knows what we're talking about. And yeah, you can download that PDF. It's really fun to look at. It also shows the importance of RPGs in Italy and the importance of RPG conventions in Italy, right? This is Milan Games Week and Cartoomix. They have the amazing Lucca game convention. So, it also speaks to that international angle and growth.
Yeah, and you can, go get your Burger King adventure at Burger King in Italy, and then get this, and you'll be all set. All your gaming needs met in one place.
Did we share that Burger King Italy?
I feel like we did, but I don't know if
I think we did.
did.
If not, there isn't. That's also been a funny thing to watch. Yeah.
Check out the Eldritch Lorecast. We talked about it there for sure.
Excellent. Good.
Awesome. We'll go to our creator corner this week, where we're looking at Draw Steel Quick Reference. This is from Tom Christie, aka D20 Play, friend of the show. He's pulled together a 2-page and a 1-page quick reference for the Draw Steel RPG. You can print these out the next time you run your game, so your players have all the details handy. Or if you're the director, they're great for you too. For just $3.99 on Drive-Thru RPG, link in our show notes.
I use them in my game. Endorsed.
There you go. And Jeff Stevens, also a friend of the show, has a new product called Quest for the Keep on the Borderlands. This is a new DM's Guild supplement for those that are using Heroes from the Borderlands starter set. It gives you additional encounters, some one-shots, some NPCs, and a quest within the keep. You can see a full list of the quests and a preview of the product on the product page, which has a link in our show notes to the DM's Guild. Good stuff there as well. Good stuff all around. Good job, Teos. And that is our news and commentary section this week on Mastering Dungeons. Stay tuned for our talk coming up with Ethan Yen.